Theodore Kwabena Taylor, his role in our march to independence. The path to an independence was forged in diverse ways during the early part of the 20th century by several people. Some ordinary public-spirited people who intervened in an extraordinary way to speed our fight for independence. As we celebrate the 65th anniversary of our independence, it is appropriate to recognize and celebrate one such person who actively participated and contributed to the forging of the country, but who, to a large extent, has been relegated to a footnote in our history. His contribution is even more inspiring if we place ourselves in the narrative of his life to depict the history of our country as more of a living movement of people and events that occurred in our not so distant past. I knew the man. He was larger than life, confident, suave, and diligent in all his pursuits. He did things because of the love for his people and his country. Just because I knew him, though not too well, I feel fortunate that I can place myself in his narrative, and that I was part of his history and can bask in the glory that he brought to the people of Osun. I grew up in what was known as Alaremi, or Lagos Town, or Accra New Town. Malamata was not too far off for me. I knew Kokomlemle fairly well. And Agbotin, where Royal Castle was situated. I knew the owner because I visited his son there, but did not know the history of the palace and the fact that it had been leased out for the war effort at some stage. My grandmother had grown up with him around Orange House, Horse Road, where he was born on 26th of January, 1888. There were then quite a contingent of Creole families there at the start of the last century. The Doves, Buckles, Taylors, Coles, Grants, Roberts, Sawyers, Nylanders, who have now been integrated into Ghana polity based on the deep philosophical concept of the Ghana people of Ablikuma, Abakumawo. There are several aspects of his upbringing that I can relate to that shaped his outlook on life. It was the hard, disciplined salon training that he got, often running away from various uncles and aunties who nurtured him, but also his loyalty to his masters and mentors who helped to form his character for a remarkable life of public service. His whole life was about hard graft. He did not shy away from work. He loved challenges. He tried his hand at every profession and grasped every opportunity that came his way. He worked as a steward, a pantry servant, apprentice fitter, winch driver, messenger, and office boy with various people, both foreign and local, and had benefited from these associations. He traversed the country in these jobs, all till he settled down on a job in which he was to excel, that of a project manager in building culverts, streets, houses, factories. He had graduated from being a hard timekeeper and taskmaster to being a conscientious project manager, always with an eye on profit. And though driving his workforce hard, they were devoted to him because he kept he kept the numerous promises he made to them about sharing some of the profit with them. His first job as a builder was with Mr. Cransit, a German, at the site of where my grandfather Akila Akpasoye's Christiana house still stands at Tudu. Their respect for him bordered on affection, and it was the same attitude he took to his business as an exporter of cocoa, palm kernels, and piassava, and an importer of all manner of goods. He had learned his trade because he had worked as an assistant and interpreter for many of the foreign agents working in the country. They had trusted him with huge sums of money, and he in turn had learned from them the rules of the mercantile business, the volumes and the margins. He had learned how to cut deals, how to negotiate contracts, how to cajole and even coerce people to pay him and honor their obligations. As his business grew, he was bold enough to charter boats on his own, to rely on agents, some of whom were not exactly trustworthy. He employed white people. He went as far as to set up a business in UK, occupying some choice address in what is now the City of London, a WC2 address. He even married and divorced a white woman, providing her with a generous settlement. He trusted in the law and took people who he did not honor their contracts to court and won decisions against them. In the same manner, he held court on his many sojourns and travels, consulting with royalty. On one such trip, being feted and giving a grand tour of Buckingham Palace. He attended exhibitions and trade shows. He was not only in London, but in Cardiff and Bristol, Paris, Leipzig, Trieste, and the Middle East, Singapore, India, China, and as far as Japan. Indeed, his expertise in Japanese goods helped to coin a phrase, Ke ule ni she kede Japan. He was a wonderful host, entertaining royalty, both African and European, in the Savoy in London, and holding many sherry parties of the intelligentsia and the elite in his expansive castle at Kokomremre. His widened circle of friends suggests that he developed his own financial capital. That as he developed his financial capital, even to the extent of almost starting a bank and subsequently being responsible in some way for the setting up of Barclays Bank in Ghana, so did he invest in his social capital, knowing and pinpointing contacts and friends that could be called on to help implement some of his dreams. Little is known of his mobilization of people to reduce prices of foodstuffs, to curb a looming hunger that was revealed to him in a dream. He enlisted the support of the clergy, the traditional priests, the traditional rulers, and a host of vocational and professional people who supported his dream of reduction in the price of ordinary goods, fish and farm produce. This initiative had the support of the government, and he was accorded police escorts as he traveled around the country to plead his largely successful cause. It was he who got Anglican Bishop Anglobi of Accra and High Priest of Accra, Naiwomi, to pray together at the beach so that the catch would be plentiful. And he later on made his report to the assembled dignitaries at a meeting place around the main Catholic church at Arena. The galvanization of people in the 1930s must have been a trial run for the events that took place closer to independence. The Ghana people have a saying, Ayegbomo Dani Awo Manche. His lineage as a direct descendant and grandson of the first Kwabena Bonne, who led his people from Techima, fleeing from war, to settle at the foot of the Christianborg Castle and to found one of the four quarters of Osualata, qualified him to be a Manche, and was duly nominated and installed under the stool name of Nii Kwabena BONNE III. On assumption of the title, he led a retinue of 300 people through Kumasi, where he was welcomed by the Asantehene on his way to his roots at Techima. There he was accepted in the most memorable, thunderous, and emotional Durbar, where the Omanhene of Techima invested him with an appropriate dual title, Nana Owusu Akente III, Uyokohene of Techima, and he was presented with a golden sword, a chief, as a symbol of his authority. If I observed earlier that Kwabena Bonne was quite deliberate in his assessment of business opportunities, and he was quite calculated in how he used legal and administrative processes, he used the law to assert his position on his title as recognized Osu Alata Manche, insisting that he was in no way usurping the role of the substantive Osu Manche, to whom he continued to pay homage, but that he was indeed chief of just one of the four quarters of Osu, Kinkanwe, Ashanti, and Neho. His title was at par with the other quarters, but subservient to the Osu Manche. But it was his role as a member of the then Joint Provisional Council and his knowledge of mercantile issues and membership of the African Merchants Association that he sought to bring change in the commercial enterprises and extortionate practices of the corrupt cartel of the Association of West African Merchants, who continued to increase prices even after the war. He knew what it cost to import goods, and the fact that a profit rate of 75% of goods landed in the country was more than the ordinary people could afford. He was confident of his success, and he worked with many of these foreign traders, as he had worked with many foreign traders in the past. He was not afraid of them and knew that he could take them on. His anti-inflation committee received widespread support from the Joint Provisional Council, as well as from citizens and traditional leaders around the country. He entered into negotiation with the European traders, who did not take him seriously and felt that because of their monopolistic stranglehold on commerce, any boycott of their goods will be a nine-way wonder, or as they can say, Hoochi. But his support was unassailable and could not be shaken. And so on the 26th of January, 1948, when the boycott started, it held solid across the country. No amount of bribery of the citizens would shake the resolve of the people, who still refused to buy from the foreign traders as the telegrams flooded in from the provinces that the boycott was solid and lasted for a month. We cannot buy, your price is too high. If you don't cut down your prices, then close down your stores and take away your goods to your own country. I can just imagine him chanting this slogan in this special brand of English. Eventually, the European traders capitulated, and at a special negotiating meeting, agreed to cut down their prices. This was on the 20th of February, 1948, with the boycott set to end on 26th of February, 1948. The message of the call-off of the boycott, however, was slow in getting to the people, as the traders did that in implementing all aspects of the protocol. Events, however, have a way of taking their own course. On the 28th of February, 1948, the ex-servicemen marched to the castle to present their demands for the government failing to pay them an equitable pension for their war effort took a wrong turn from the agreed route. The police chief ordered his subordinates to fire. When they refused, he was seen with a rifle himself, using live ammunition to kill 3 ex-servicemen, Sergeant Adete, Corporal Tipo, and Private Odate Lamte. When the news of the looting broke in the confusion, of the shooting broke in the confusion, the looting of shops started. The Western Commission that was formed to investigate the routes showed that the events of the boycott were in no way connected to the looting. Kwabena BONNE had used his knowledge to plan, organize, staff, lead, control the boycott. It was a monumental success. He had expended his own social capital and his financial resources to organize this. He did not seek any rewards. The beneficiaries of his political, in political terms, were the accidental big 6, Dankwa, Foriata, Akufo-Addo, Obechebi Lamte, Akwaje, and Nkrumah were detained. They would have actually been 8, but there was no place on the plane for the others, for the other 2, R.S. Play and another Usuma Christensen. Those who had no hand in the successful boycott have been immortalized as the accidental beneficiaries of the fight for an independence. The man who had galvanized the people, Kwabena BONNE, who had conceived his plan long before the establishment of the convention, remains uncelebrated. What this larger-than-life citizen who had led us to independence did. Of course, the politicians courted him. Some promised to make him the Minister of Commerce when they won their election. Others promised to make him a super chief over all chiefs in Ghana. His response, as always, was, "You, a human, cannot make me anything better than God has made me." Perhaps it was because of his humility that he has never been celebrated. Perhaps it was because he shied away from politics and was content to serve his people of the Gold Coast. On this 65th anniversary of our independence, I charge the Osu Heritage Foundation to initiate a special campaign to change the name of the airport in Accra to Nii Kwabena BONNE Airport in honor of this son of the soil. That will be a fitting memorial to this reluctant hero of our time. I also charge the Osu Heritage Foundation that the book, Milestones in the History of the Gold Coast, autobiography of Nii Kwabena BONNE, Osu Alatamanche, also known as Nana Owusu Akenten III, Oyokohini of Techima Ashanti, published on 1st January 1953, must be reprinted and given to every child born of Osu, so that it may inspire them to achieve greater than what could ever be achieved for the cause of Ghana. We must continue in the scholarship of Frederick Douna, the first chief of Osu, but we must also learn to honor our heroes. Thank you for listening to me.